Over years of work, Max had never disobeyed a single order, until that day when all the equipment said there was no one left in the rubble. What that dog found down there was a miracle from the Virgin Mary that nobody can explain. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the Virgin Mary's miracles are reaching. Dylan was 34 years old and had been working with rescue dogs for nearly a decade. You know how it is when someone finds what they were born to do? Dylan was like that. From a young age, he had a different connection with animals. He understood what they wanted to say just by their look, by the way they walked, by the movement of their tail. When he joined the state rescue team, he realized he had found his place in the world. But something was missing. That's when Max came into his life. Max arrived as a puppy just 8 weeks old. A German shepherd with dark fur and attentive eyes. From the first day, Dylan knew that dog was special. The training lasted 2 years, and he had one characteristic that everyone on the team knew. Max never disobeyed. Never. Dylan trusted Max more than he trusted any equipment. Dylan commanded, Max obeyed without hesitation. This partnership had saved lives. Many lives. It was on a Tuesday in October that Dylan and Max received the call. A building had collapsed in the Delaware countryside. 4 floors, old construction, one of those you look at and think, this place has seen better days. The walls had cracks that nobody ever fixed properly. The elevator worked when it felt like it. The residents complained about strange noises at night, crackling sounds that came from the ceiling, from the floor, from the walls. But nobody did anything. The building manager said it was just the old structure, that old buildings make noise. The residents believed it because they wanted to believe it. Moving is a hassle. It's easier to pretend everything's fine until it's not. That Tuesday morning, the noises got louder. Some residents woke up scared. Others didn't even notice. Life went on normally for a few hours. Around 11 in the morning, a new crack appeared on the second-floor wall. It was big from floor to ceiling. The resident of apartment 203 saw it and got worried. He called the building manager. The building manager said he'd send someone to check it out after lunch. After lunch was too late. At 2:17 in the afternoon, the ground gave way. It just gave way. And the building came down. It wasn't like in the movies where everything happens in slow motion and people have time to run. It was fast, sudden. A deafening noise, a cloud of dust, and then silence. Complete silence. The news spread quickly. Rescue teams arrived at the scene. Dylan and Max were among the first. When they arrived, Dylan looked at the rubble and felt his stomach tighten. It was so much devastation. Concrete, twisted metal, shattered furniture, everything mixed together in a giant pile of debris. "Let's work," Dylan said to Max, putting the search harness on him. Max sniffed the air. His eyes became alert. He knew exactly what to do. In the first hours, they found 4 people, all alive, all injured, but alive. A 40-year-old woman who lived on the first floor. An elderly couple from the 3rd floor. A young man in his 20s who had just moved into the building. Each person found was a victory. But it was also a reminder that there could be more people down there. The neighbors who were rescued were in shock. Many couldn't speak properly. The rescuers asked, who else lived in the building? Who was home at that time? The answers were confused. Some said there was a lady on the 4th floor. Others weren't sure. Nobody knew for certain. "There was a lady in 401, said the woman from the 1st floor, still shaking. "Lydia, I think, lived alone, but I don't know if she was home." Dylan wrote it down. Lydia? 4th floor. Maybe it was little, but it was something. The work continued through the night. In operations like this, the teams rotate. While one group works, another rests. It's the only way to keep searches active 24 hours a day. At 3 in the morning, it was Dylan and Max's turn to rest. The team coordinator was firm. "Your shift is over. Go rest. Team 2 takes over now." Dylan agreed reluctantly. He knew it was the correct procedure, but he hated stopping. Every minute away from the rubble felt like wasted time. He lay down in a makeshift tent next to the rubble, with Max at his feet. He woke up with the sunrise and went back to work. The first day ended with 7 people rescued, all alive. It was a good number, a number that gave hope. But the lady from the 4th floor still hadn't appeared. The rescuers kept asking the rescued neighbors, "Did anyone see Lydia? Does anyone know if she was home?" The answers were always the same: "We don't know." One of the neighbors, the young man from the 3rd floor, said he had bumped into her in the hallway the night before the collapse. He remembered because she was carrying shopping bags and he offered help, but she politely refused. It was agonizing. How do you find someone without knowing for sure if that person is still there? But Dylan couldn't give up. If there was a chance, however small, he had to try. The second day was harder. Hope starts to fade after 24 hours. Everyone knows this. It's not something spoken out loud, but it's on everyone's mind. Without water, a person can survive about 3 days under normal conditions. In the rubble, with dust, heat, injuries, that time decreases drastically. Dylan tried not to think about it. He focused on the work. Max continued working with the same dedication as always. He sniffed every corner, every gap, every hole in the rubble. When he found something, he barked. When he didn't find anything, he kept searching. The lady from the 4th floor remained missing. "Maybe she wasn't home," said one of the rescuers during a break. "Maybe she went to visit someone, go shopping, anything." "Maybe," Dylan replied, but something inside him said no. Something said that Lydia was there, somewhere underneath that rubble. He looked at Max. The dog also seemed restless, as if he knew there was still work to do. On the 3rd day, the searches began to lose momentum. It wasn't giving up, it was reality. 72 hours, 3 full days. Statistics said the chances of finding someone alive after that time were minimal. Have you ever stopped to think about how time passes differently when you're waiting for something? A minute can feel like an hour. Now imagine that multiplied by 72 hours. The equipment continued being used. Thermal sensors that detect heat, special cameras that see in the dark, sound detectors, and all of them said the same thing: no signs of life. Dylan looked at the rubble and felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't just frustration. It was something more. A feeling that they were letting something slip by. That there was something there that nobody was seeing. "One more sweep," he asked the coordinator. The coordinator was tired. Everyone was. 3 days sleeping poorly, working under strong sun, breathing dust. The body takes its toll. "Dylan, the area has been checked several times. The sensors show nothing." "I know, but let Max do one more." The coordinator looked at him for a long moment. He'd known Dylan for years. They had worked together on dozens of operations. He knew Dylan was stubborn when he believed in something. "All right." Dylan nodded and went back to the rubble with Max. They spent the entire afternoon searching every square meter. Max sniffed attentively. Dylan observed every reaction from him. The two worked in perfect sync. It was beautiful to see, actually. Years of partnership had created a connection that went beyond words and commands. Dylan knew how to interpret Max's slightest movement. It was almost as if they spoke the same language. But that day, that language didn't bring good news. When the sun began to set, painting the sky orange, Dylan sat on a rock and looked at the wreckage. The frustration was heavy in his chest, shoulders slumped, eyes tired. "Where are you?" he murmured, not knowing exactly who he was talking to. To Lydia? To himself? To someone up there who might be able to hear? Max lay down at his feet. He seemed tired too. His fur was dirty with dust. his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Dylan ran his hand over the dog's head. "We tried, partner," he said quietly. "We tried." That night, Dylan couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the tent ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. The people rescued, the lady who might be down there, Lydia. He didn't even know her, didn't know what her face looked like, her voice, her story. He only knew a name and an apartment number. But she was someone. What if it were his mother down there, his grandmother, someone he loved? He got up from the makeshift bed and went to where Max was sleeping. The dog opened his eyes when he felt his presence. "Tomorrow is our last day, partner," Dylan said quietly. "Let's give it everything we've got." Max raised his head and pressed his snout against Dylan's hand, as if he understood every word. Maybe he did. The fourth day began with a meeting. The coordinator called the whole team to explain the situation. His voice was calm, but serious. "Everyone, you know how this works. 4 days without signs of life, the equipment detects nothing. Today we'll do the final sweep and then close the active searches." Nobody said anything. Everyone knew it was the correct procedure. You couldn't keep a rescue operation active forever. There were protocols, limited resources. "Dylan, you and Max do the final sweep of the northeast area. It was the most affected zone, worth going through one more time before closing," said the coordinator. Dylan nodded. "Understood." He put the working harness on Max and walked to the indicated area. It was a part of the rubble that had been checked before. There was a lot of heavy concrete, iron beams, pieces of wall. It was difficult to access and dangerous to work. "Let's go, Max," said Dylan. "One last time." Max started sniffing. The first minutes were like all the others. Max sniffed, Dylan observed. No different signs, no unusual reactions. The support team was positioned a few meters away, everyone ready to act if necessary. Dylan looked at his watch. 9:40 in the morning. The sun was already strong. "Come on, Max," he said. "A little more?" The dog continued working. He sniffed here, sniffed there. He moved through the rubble with the agility of someone who had done this hundreds of times. It was around 10:15 when something changed. Max was sniffing an area near a fallen concrete beam. Suddenly, he stopped. He stayed completely still for a few seconds. Dylan noticed immediately. "What is it, Max?" The dog began to sniff more intensely. His snout went from one side to the other, as if trying to locate something specific, and then he started digging. "Max, easy," he said. Max kept digging. "Max, stop." The dog completely ignored him. "Max, come back." Max didn't come back. Instead, he started digging faster. His paws scratched the concrete, threw rocks and dust everywhere, and he started barking. Loud barks, insistent, desperate. Dylan felt a chill down his spine. In their entire career together, Max had never done that. He had never disobeyed a direct command. He had never barked like that. "What's happening?" asked one of the rescuers, approaching. "I don't know," Dylan replied. "The thermal sensors show nothing in this area," said the technician, checking the equipment. Dylan looked at Max. The dog kept digging, barking, completely focused on that specific spot. "Check again?" he asked. The technician passed the sensor over the area. Nothing. "There's nobody there, Dylan. The equipment doesn't lie." Dylan knew it was true. Those devices were reliable. They had helped find dozens of people over the years, but Max was reliable too, and Max was saying there was something there. The coordinator approached with firm steps. His face was stern. "Dylan, what's going on here?" asked the coordinator. "Max is indicating this area. There's someone down there," Dylan replied. The coordinator looked at the dog, who kept digging and barking nonstop. Then he looked at the equipment in the technician's hand. No heat signal, no sound, nothing. "My dog doesn't make mistakes," said Dylan firmly. "In years of work, Max has never given a false alert. Never. And look at him. Look at how he's acting." The coordinator looked. These are giant concrete blocks. It'll take hours, maybe the whole day, said the coordinator. Then we take the whole day, said Dylan without hesitation. The coordinator shook his head. I can't authorize this. This spot was evaluated, structurally unstable. I can't put people there. I won't risk lives. Dylan took a step forward. He looked the coordinator in the eyes. With all due respect, I'm not leaving here, said Dylan. The silence was heavy. The coordinator was about to refuse when a voice came from the group. I'll stay with Dylan, said Carlos, one of the team's most experienced rescuers. He had 20 years of rescue work. I've seen dogs find people that no equipment detected, Carlos continued, approaching. Another rescuer raised his hand. I'll stay too, he said. And another. I'll help dig, said one more. The coordinator looked around. Half the team was on Dylan's side. He looked at Max, who kept barking, insistent. He looked at the equipment, silent. He took a deep breath. All right, he said finally. Let's try. But if this moves 1 centimeter off what's expected, we stop. No discussion. Dylan felt relief take over his body. Dylan nodded immediately. Bring the machines, said the coordinator. Now. The first 5 minutes were frustrating. Rocks, concrete, dust, nothing but wreckage. Max didn't leave his spot. He stayed there, sniffing, barking, as if wanting to say, it's here, keep going. Dylan worked alongside the rescuers. 10 minutes. More concrete, more wreckage, a piece of furniture, maybe a chair, a shoe, a dented pot. Dylan, I think, one of the rescuers began. Keep going, Dylan interrupted. 15 minutes. They had already removed almost 2 meters of rubble. Dylan looked around. The entire team was exhausted, tired eyes. The machines worked nonstop, removing concrete blocks, but it seemed endless. Hope was draining away. Dylan felt the weight of the decision he had made. He had put the entire team to work based on a dog's instinct, and so far, nothing. Maybe the coordinator was right. Maybe the equipment was right. Maybe it was time to accept it and shut it down. That's when he felt it, a smell. Faint at first, then stronger. Unmistakable. Roses. Dylan frowned. He looked around. There were no roses there, only rubble, dust, and concrete. Nothing that explained that perfume. The scent of roses remained for a few seconds. Then it left as mysteriously as it arrived. And something strange happened inside Dylan. The frustration he'd felt just seconds ago simply disappeared. In its place came a certainty he couldn't explain, a new strength, a courage that didn't come from him. Dylan took a deep breath and went back to removing rubble with more determination. Max kept barking. 20 minutes. That's when one of the rescuers suddenly stopped. Wait, he said. Everyone stopped. What is it? Dylan asked. The rescuer pointed to a gap between 2 concrete blocks. I saw something. Movement. Dylan approached. He looked through the gap. It was too dark to see properly. Pass the flashlight, he asked. Someone handed him a flashlight. Dylan shone it through the gap and froze. Down there, in a tiny space between the rubble, there was a hand, and the hand was moving. Dylan felt his heart race, felt his legs weaken for a second. Felt something he had only felt a few times in his life. There's someone alive here, Dylan shouted. There's someone. The reaction was immediate. More rescuers ran to help. The coordinator came. The paramedic got ready. Carefully, said the coordinator. We don't know how the structure is. Any wrong movement could cause a new collapse. Dylan knew it was true. He had seen it happen before. But he also knew they couldn't take too long. If there was someone down there for 4 days, every second counted. The work continued. Slower now, more careful. They removed a rock, checked the stability, removed another, checked again. Max was lying a few meters away, watching. He had finally stopped barking. His mission was accomplished. Now it was up to the humans. An hour passed, and finally they managed to open enough space to see. It was an elderly woman, white hair, face covered in dust. She was lying on her side in an air pocket between the rubble, a space so small it seemed impossible for someone to fit there. Her eyes were closed, her breathing was weak, but she was breathing. And that's when everyone saw it. The elderly woman was embracing a statue of the Virgin Mary, one of those about 8 inches tall, the kind you put in a prayer shrine. She held it against her chest, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. She was injured, dehydrated, but given the circumstances, she was okay. 4 days, without water, without food, over 80 years old, embracing Our Lady, and she was alive. Dylan felt tears in his eyes, not from sadness, from relief. Getting her out took another 2 hours. Every movement was calculated to the millimeter. Dylan and Max stayed there the whole time, but from a distance. Now the work was for the machine operators and the rescue team. Dylan could only stand there, watching, hoping, waiting. Max was lying beside him, watching everything attentively. He seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. 2 rescuers went down carefully and began to lift her slowly. When she came out of the rubble, everyone stopped to look. She was disoriented, didn't know where she was or what day it was, but she was alive. The paramedics started working immediately. Her movements were quick, precise, professional. "She's dehydrated but stable," said the paramedic, with a voice that mixed surprise and relief. "I can't explain how she survived this long." Nobody could. Dylan looked at Max. The dog looked back. And in that moment, Dylan was certain that something extraordinary had happened. The rescue ambulance took her for treatment. Dylan and Max stayed at the site for a few more minutes, helping to close the operation. But Dylan's mind wasn't there. He was thinking about the woman, about the image of the Virgin Mary she was holding. At the end of the afternoon, when the work was done, Dylan went to the hospital. He didn't really know why. He had no obligation to go. He didn't know her. He wasn't family. But he needed to know. He needed to understand. When he arrived, he asked at reception for the patient who had been rescued from the rubble. The nurse recognized him. "She woke up a little while ago. She asked for you." Dylan was surprised. "Asked for me?" "Asked for the man with the dog, said she wanted to say thank you." The nurse led him to the room. The room was small and quiet. There was a window that let in the late afternoon light. "You're the man with the dog," she said. Her voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. "I am," Dylan replied, approaching. "Dylan, and the dog is Max." "Max," she repeated. "Beautiful name." Dylan pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "I'm well," she replied with a weak smile. "Thanks to God and the Virgin Mary." Dylan didn't want to force anything. If she wanted to talk, she would. If not, that was fine. But Lydia wanted to. "I lived in that building for 23 years, she began. "Since my husband passed away, I lived alone. No family, just me and my memories. That morning, I felt something bad was going to happen. I decided to leave home, go to a friend's house. I started gathering my things. Documents, photos of my husband, and her." Lydia pointed to the statue. "This statue belonged to my grandmother. It's over 100 years old. I wasn't going to leave home without taking her." Dylan looked at the statue. "I was in the living room, putting her away, when the building came down," said Lydia. "There was no time for anything. I just remember the noise, the dust, and then darkness." She closed her eyes for a moment. "When I woke up, I was trapped. I couldn't move. Couldn't see anything, but I knew I was still holding her in my embrace, and that gave me strength." Dylan hesitated before asking, but he needed to know. "How was it? The 4 days?" Lydia opened her eyes. She looked at Dylan with an expression he couldn't decipher. "At first, I thought it would happen quickly, that I would fall asleep and not wake up again. I was at peace with that. I'm 82 years old. I lived a good life. If it was my time, I was ready." She paused. "But then I heard noises up there, voices, machines. I understood they were searching, and I started to have hope." Dylan imagined the scene. An elderly woman, trapped in darkness, hearing the sounds of rescue up above, unable to call for help. It was on the third day that she appeared. Dylan felt a chill. She? The Virgin Mary. The room fell silent. Dylan didn't know what to say. "I know how it sounds," said Lydia. Dylan didn't respond. "I'm not going to try to convince you," said Lydia. "I have no way to prove it. I only know what I saw. What I felt." She took a deep breath. Everything was dark. I had already lost track of time. I didn't know if it was day or night. Dylan listened without interrupting. And suddenly, I saw a light. Faint at first, then stronger. And in the middle of the light, a woman. It was her, the Virgin Mary, exactly like in this image. The blue mantle, the serene face, the eyes full of kindness. "What did she say?" Dylan asked. Lydia smiled. "She said, 'Don't be afraid, my daughter. You're not alone. You just need to wait a little longer.'" Lydia looked at Dylan. "After that, I didn't feel thirsty anymore, didn't feel hungry. The discomfort continued, but it was as if it didn't matter anymore. Her words gave me peace, gave me strength to continue." Lydia was silent for a moment. Then she looked at Dylan with curiosity. "Tell me something. How did you find me? The rescuers said the equipment didn't detect anything where I was, but the dog found me." Dylan thought about how to answer. "It was Max," he said finally. "My dog. He indicated the exact place where you were." "But the equipment showed nothing?" "No. Everything said there was nobody there." Lydia absorbed the information. "And even so, the dog insisted?" "Yes. He dug, barked, and refused to leave." Dylan saw something change in Lydia's face. Tears rolled down her face. Lydia looked at Dylan with an intensity he had never seen before. "Your dog, Max. He didn't find me alone." Dylan swallowed hard. "She brought him to me." Dylan couldn't speak, couldn't process it. There was an 82-year-old woman who had survived the impossible, embracing a statue of the Virgin Mary, saying that the Virgin Mary had sent Max to her. Dylan had no explanation, but he didn't need one either. Some things just happen. Dylan stayed a few more minutes with Lydia. They didn't talk more about the rescue. They talked about simple things, about the weather, about the hospital food, about how Max would be happy to know she was okay. When Dylan stood up to leave, Lydia held his hand. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up, for trusting your dog." Lydia smiled, that weak but genuine smile. "Tell Max I'm going to pray for him every day. He's a good dog." "The best I've ever known." Dylan left the room. He walked down the hallway in silence, got in the car, stayed still in the parking lot for several minutes without starting the engine, thinking. When he got home, Max was waiting at the door. The dog wagged his tail when he saw Dylan, came running, jumped, licked his face like he always did. Dylan knelt down and hugged the dog. "You did good work today, partner," he said. "The best work of your life." Max barked as if he agreed. Dylan stayed there, embracing the dog, for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. About the disobedience, about the digging, about the woman who survived the impossible, and about her words. "He didn't find me alone. She brought him to me." Dylan wasn't a religious man. He never had been. He believed in science, in logic, in things he could see and touch and prove. But that night, before sleeping, he did something he hadn't done since he was young. He prayed. He didn't know to whom or if anyone was listening, but he prayed anyway. He thanked for Max, for Lydia, for having trusted when everything said to give up. And he asked quietly that if there was someone up there watching, to keep guiding Max, to keep helping them find whoever needed to be found. Lydia recovered. It took time. It was weeks in the hospital, then physical therapy. One of her acquaintances from church took her in while she had nowhere to live. The building, of course, no longer existed. Everything Lydia had was lost in the rubble. Everything except the image of the Virgin Mary. Dylan visited her a few times. He brought Max along once. Lydia cried when she saw the dog. She hugged him, thanked him, prayed for him, right there. Max stayed quiet in her lap, as if he understood the importance of that moment. With time, Lydia found a new place to live, a small apartment in another neighborhood. Simpler than the previous one, but cozy. She placed the statue of the Virgin Mary in the place of honor. The acquaintances from church started visiting her more. The story of the rescue spread, and Lydia gained new fame, the Woman of the Miracle. She didn't like that title much. She said the miracle wasn't about her, it was about faith, about not giving up, about trusting when everything seems lost. The Virgin Mary didn't save me because I'm special, she explained. She saved me because I needed it, and because someone up there heard my prayers. Dylan continued working with Max for 2 more years. They participated in other rescues, found other people, saved other lives. But no rescue was like that one. No rescue made Dylan question everything he believed. He never became a religious man in the traditional sense. He didn't start going to church every Sunday, didn't start praying every day. But something changed in him. He started to believe there were things he couldn't explain, things bigger than science, bigger than logic. Things that simply happened, and the only possible answer was to accept. Max eventually retired. 9 years old, his joints weren't the same anymore. He started living like a normal dog, sleeping on the couch, barking at the neighbors, stealing food from the table when nobody was looking. 1 year after Max's retirement, Dylan received a call. It was Lydia. "I wanted to invite you to something," she said. "It's the 1-year anniversary of the rescue. I'm going to have a small celebration at a friend's house. I'd like you to come." And bring Max. Dylan went. The celebration was simple. About 15 people, mostly ladies from the church Lydia attended. There was cake, coffee. When Dylan arrived with Max, everyone stopped to look. Lydia came to greet them. She hugged Dylan, then knelt down to hug Max. "My hero," she said to the dog, "you don't know how much I think about you." Max licked her face, as if saying, "Me too." Before Dylan left, Lydia asked to talk with him alone. They went to the garden of the house. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. "I wanted to thank you again," said Lydia, "for everything." "You don't need to thank me, Miss Lydia. I just did my job." "No," she said firmly. "You did more than your job. You trusted. When the equipment said no, when your team wanted to leave, you trusted Max. That's not work. That's faith." Dylan didn't know what to answer. "You know what I learned in these 83 years of life?" Lydia continued. "Faith isn't about seeing to believe. It's about believing even when you don't see. It's about trusting even when it doesn't make sense." She looked at him with those tired eyes, but full of life. "You had faith in Max, and Max had faith in something greater. And because of that, I'm here today." Dylan felt tears in his eyes. He didn't try to hide them. "Thank you, Miss Lydia. Thank you for reminding me that miracles still happen. Before finishing, I want to invite you to something special. Come participate in our prayer community to the Virgin Mary, formed by people from various places in the world who unite with the same purpose of faith. If you feel in your heart the call to be part of this collective prayer, tap the button below, become a channel member, and come pray with us. And look, if you made it here to the end of this story, do something for me. Write in the comments Max, the name of the dog who refused to give up when everyone else had given up. I want to see how many hearts this story really reached. And every time I read Max in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Write in the comments about some miracle you've witnessed or experienced, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue blessing and protecting you and your family. Amen.